anything else, any other sort of trends you're noticing with your friends or clients in sort of that millennial age group when it comes to mortgages?
I find that they're very intimidated, and it's almost as though they don't want to know what they don't know. People my age are a little bit afraid to hear what their credit score is or to find out that they might not be able to afford what they want. Usually what I try to do to advocate against that is just say, let's take a snapshot of where you are today. If your credit's bad, if you made those bad decisions when you were in university and didn't pay off specific cards or anything, or if you're not making the money you thought you'd be making by now, that's fine. But at least we can better prepare. So if you weren't planning to buy for another 3 years, you're not wasting those 3 years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely, for sure. And then anything else? I mean, you've got a web page that is for millennials called
right.
Millennial Mortgage. Actually, not really a web page, but you have a Facebook group page called Millennial Mortgage. Are there questions that are coming to you on your Facebook page that millennials are sort of really asking you these days?
To a certain extent. So that actually originated as just an Instagram account that I made for fun because some friends of mine were saying that you can't make mortgages interesting with pictures. I still don't know if you can, but I'm trying. But what I'm noticing, though, is it is garnering attention from millennials faster than I thought it would. We've got a pretty good audience with it so far. And the main question that we get is, I'm paid hourly. Can I afford to do this? Or I'm planning to become an entrepreneur. Can self-employed people not get mortgages? And so it's not so much that they're asking questions specific to them. They're more just confirming or trying to disprove a lot of the myths that are out there that their parents have been telling them or slightly older generations have said. So what I'm actually trying to do over the next few months is a campaign to just dispel a lot of the myths that people hear, such as having to buy with 20% down, which isn't true, and the fact that self-employed people can't get mortgages. I just want to clear the air on certain issues like that, but it seems that it really is on millennials' minds. They just didn't really have an avenue to explore it or to find out more about it.
Interesting. And actually, to that note about the self-employed people, I mean, do you want to just kind of walk us through a little bit what happens for someone who's self-employed trying to get a mortgage approval versus someone who is a salaried employee?
For sure. So anytime that your income is variable, so even if you are gainfully employed, if it's commissioned, if you're using overtime hours, performance bonus, anything like that, and especially if you're self-employed and entrepreneurial, the banks are going to want to see a minimum 2-year average of your what's called your line 150 income. So the income that you're actually claiming after all write-offs to the banks. So what they do is or the reason for that is more just to make sure that there's some sort of consistency, because whenever you have a variable income, you can have a very good year and then a very bad year. And the banks don't want to judge you based on either of those. They want to make sure they've got an idea of what your lifestyle really can hold. So we want to make sure that your taxes are up to date, that you have been doing this for a minimum of 2 tax years, not just 2 calendar years. And even if the income comes in a little bit light, there are certain options available. So we do have lenders that would allow for what's called a stated income deal. They allow us to gross up some of the income that you use just because your lifestyle is obviously a little different than what you see on paper, because self-employed individuals try to net it down as low as possible to avoid paying high taxes.
Got it. And so when they say that they can gross up the income, what are we talking about? 10, 15, 50%? How much? It's
more going to vary based on the client, the bank we take them to, and then the property. Some programs allow us to gross it up by 15%, some up to 50%. And then there's other programs where if they show, let's say, $19,000 on paper, we can still claim $90,000 as long as it's realistic. So you're not going to see a taxi driver or an Uber driver that makes $800,000 a year. But you are going to see realistically a contractor who netted all of his expenses down to $20,000 and he needed $85,000 to qualify.
Right. Now, on the renting front, have you noticed that quite a few of your friends obviously are still renting because the market in Toronto is so expensive for them? And do you see them as long-term renters? Like, do you think that there's some people there that unfortunately will never ever be able to buy something because the market's so expensive? I do see a lot of my generation renting. A lot of my friends in the area rent. It's more that they're trying to get the lifestyle ahead of the time, or rather a little bit ahead of the time. What I find though is when you're in a market like Toronto where rent can exceed $18, $19 or $2,000 a month, it doesn't really leave a lot of room for savings for a down payment. And when I was first looking to come down to the city, I found that the rent on some of these places was larger than a mortgage payment. So it's almost wiser. I mean, it's, again, take it with a grain of salt and look at it at a case by case basis, but it's almost wiser to purchase some real estate as opposed to paying rent for some others.
it really just comes down to the individual, what their saving habits look like, and what lifestyle they can afford and what lifestyle they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you see people getting creative in terms of maybe, let's say, renting a house and trying to, sort of apportion off a different room so that at least that way they can get their rent down so that they can try to save for a home later on?
Due to a certain extent, when you're dealing with leasing a house, the type of clientele that go that route are usually a little bit more of an established family unit. So they don't typically want to have strangers living in the third bedroom or anything like that. And so my generation, mostly they try to stick to the condo market, I think. They're definitely getting creative, though. So a new trend that's emerged lately, and I think you can speak to this as well, is cooperative purchasing.
Yep.
So they find that they can only afford, let's say, $300,000, but their friend can also afford $300,000. They're getting together and they're gonna push for a $600,000 purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've certainly been chatting with a lot of clients about, maybe they buy a duplex together, and that way one person has one apartment, somebody else has another apartment, and then that way they could certainly get a foothold into the market.
Exactly. So we definitely are resourceful, and working around the high rents in Toronto makes it a little bit difficult, but we're still able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is there a segment of millennials that kind of think, oh, forget it, they just won't ever own, and so they only will rent? Like, are there some people that sort of feel beat up by that prospect and decide that, you know what, they're just going to be forever renters? Or does everybody still have hope?
Well, I mean, it is fairly discouraging to see that a small house in Toronto can go for over $1 million, and then it's just going to appreciate at 16% per year from here.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, if people are hell-bent on living in the city, I find that they're getting a little bit more resourceful. Whereas for people who are just quick to throw their hands up and say, you know what, I can't afford to do this, they're not necessarily throwing the towel in, but they are now sort of looking in the outskirts. So I've got a lot of friends that have bought down closer towards London or more out towards Oshawa, Bowmanville, areas like that. So they're never saying no, because we really do as a generation want to own real estate. Mm-hmm. It's just we're having to be a little bit more realistic in our expectations, or a little bit more disciplined in how we're going to get what we want.
And are those same people commuting then back into the city for work?
Some of them are. I don't envy them, but some of them definitely are.
Right, absolutely. Because what part of the city do you live in?
So I live in the St. Lawrence market.
And you're saying you rent, you don't own, right?
No, I actually, when I came down, I found that rent was so high, it just didn't make sense to go that route. And so for just a few extra $100 a month, my mortgage payment allows me to live here. So I bought back in 2014.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. That's amazing. That's great.
Thank you.
And so are you in a 1 or a 2 bedroom?
I'm in a 1+1, which is a glorified 1 bedroom. But I've got the space to myself, and at least there is that other rental income capability if I wanted to. But I made sure that I made a wise investment, because it's not just a matter of buying something where the numbers are going to make sense. You want to make sure that the actual building makes sense and the actual location makes sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Definitely. And I certainly really like the St. Lawrence market area. I actually own an investment condo in that area myself.
Fantastic.
Because I think it's such a great part of the city.
Yeah, I agree. My commute to work takes me 4 minutes.
Hey, that's good. That's all about the short commute. I mean, one of the things that they were saying is that because a lot of the millennials want to live and work downtown, they've certainly started building a lot more commercial buildings in the city so that companies can have their offices downtown, because that's where the bulk of people want to work. They don't want to be out in the suburbs. So yeah, it makes sense.
With that, though, what you're seeing is a lot of these, I call them MIC condos. So quick to go up, I don't want to say poorly made, but just quickly made. And that's the difference between spending $300,000 on a condo that's going to appreciate at 2% per year versus $300,000 on a condo that's going to appreciate at 5 or 6 or 7.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes a lot of sense for sure, because, it is all about picking the right builder and the right location, because some buildings certainly appreciate faster than others. And I find that each condo building is almost like a little microcosm. It's not even to say that all condos will return a certain percentage, but each building has its own percentage based on what it's truly like to be in that building, what the amenities are like or not like, and how much the maintenance fees are and the reserve fund. But there's a lot that goes into sort of developing the value of a particular condo unit in a building, for sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to share with the audience today, Ben?
Well, if they're on any social networks, so Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, they can take a look at Millennial Mortgage. It's just a quick passive resource for them to get some information. And if they have any questions, they're always free to reach out. Otherwise, I think the best bit of information from millennials is just don't get discouraged. It really is possible to do what you're looking to do here. And one of the worst mistakes that you can make is just hoping for the best and putting things off when you have an opportunity to just just sit down, see where you are now, and then form a plan from there.
Perfect. That sounds great. That's awesome advice, Ben. Thanks again for joining us today for some Toronto real estate market insights. Once again, you can reach out to me at devel@bosleyrealestate.com or on Twitter at Devel Morrison. Thanks again for listening, and please join us for another podcast.
You've been listening to The Morrison Report. Hosted by Devel Morrison, sales representative for Bosley Real Estate Limited Brokerage, real estate investor and best-selling author, bringing you insights on the Toronto real estate market. Join us for another podcast.